I ate so many pierogies for dinner and I'm feeling kinda sick. I ate so many pierogies for dinner and I'm feeling kinda sick. There we go. That worked perfectly. Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. More specifically, a brand new Albums I Missed video. That's right, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. It's that magical time of the month, of the season, when we talk about a bunch of albums that came out in the previous month that unfortunately I did not get the chance to review. And it turns out, not only did we miss a lot of stuff, but a lot of it was really good. A lot of it is stuff that y'all were, at bare minimum, really hyped up about. With that in mind, let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. Albums I Missed, September 2024. First up, we have Songs in Crimson, brand new full-length studio album from English heavy metal crew Satan. They kicked around in the 80s for a brief period, dropped a few cult classic records and jams here and there, disbanded but then reunited in the early 2010s, and ever since then, they've consistently released high-quality songs every couple of years or so, like clockwork. Very old-school, vintage heavy metal sound and feel and production, lots of dramatic vocals and big choruses and, twin guitar harmonies and soaring leads and such. It's Satan doing what Satan do, and still doing it pretty damn well, to be fair. We're not really seeing a lot of extra spices or flavors thrown into the mix here. It's a very meat and potatoes kind of old school heavy metal record in every single way imaginable, but you know what? It's authentic, and it's hearty, and it's well put together. Satan clearly still have the musical and writing and production chops to pull it off, so fuck it, whatever, why not? It's not going to win any awards or blow any minds anytime soon, but hey, if you're looking for a return to the days of underground 1980s heavy metal, if you want that super authentic, nostalgic blast of old school, true heavy metal, this is probably it. Go fucking nuts. Have fun. You do you. Next up, we have I Am the Weapon, brand new full-length studio album, apparently the 15th overall, from Flotsam Jetsam, American thrash metal crew. I've never really been huge on a lot of their stuff. I like some of the very early records like Doomsday Deceiver and No Place for Disgrace, but after that, it's a series of flops and weird detours and duds that I'd rather not really get into. Now that said, I have to be honest, ever since the 2016 self-titled record, they've kind of been really consistently killing it. Like, there is a real argument to be made that the end of Chaos and Blood on the Water in 2019 and 2021, respectively, are maybe Flotsam Jetsam's best albums, like, in their entire discography. And honestly, in comparison to what a lot of older thrash metal bands are putting out, I mean, Flotsam Jetsam are definitely one of the stronger, more consistent bands right now. And while personally I don't think I Am the Weapon is as strong as End of Chaos or Blood in the Water, it is nevertheless, in its own right and regard, a pretty well-constructed album. Flotsam Jetsam still have a lot of fire and urgency in them. There's clearly still a lot that they want to do and that they want to communicate. These guys just sound so hungry and so excited. There's a good variety of beefy, muscular riffs and fast progressions and pummeling assaults. Lots of strong choruses. Everything is very well produced. Lots of epic tones and vibes and dynamics as well. Like, the record's got a good sense of size and scale and lots of, belted roaring vocals and soaring leads, almost bringing to mind, some very classic power metal influences and seasonings here and there. Overall, just a solid record. I think, again, in comparison to the last two specifically, not as strong, but in its own right regard, a pretty good record. There were people asking for a review. I didn't really have a ton to say. If I had done a review, we'd be looking at a 3.5 out of 5. Next up, we have Foundations, brand new solo EP from Serj Tankian. At this point, I feel pretty comfortable suggesting and saying out loud that there will very likely never be a System of a Down reunion album. They're clearly happy just doing 2 or 3 shows a year. That's fine, good for them, I guess. But to Serj Tankian's credit, he understands the demand for new System of a Down and is more than happy to try to fill the void. Like back in 2021, he released the Elasticity EP, which was filled with material that he apparently pitched to System of a Down for a new album, but they rejected it, so he said, fuck it, I'm gonna do my own thing, I'll do it myself, whatever. And apparently this EP, Foundations 2, is filled with long-lost System of a Down material that he had written for the band in the late 90s and early 2000s, but it just never really got recorded. It never really came to fruition. With this in mind, right off the bat, if you love System of a Down, you're probably going to love this EP. A lot of the things that we know and that we want and that we expect from System of a Down are present here, lyrically, sonically, conceptually. Serj's nasally shrill vocals packed with weight and heart and emotion. It's urgent, it's provocative, politically charged and potent, pretty much all the way through. Lyrics about justice and genocide feel especially potent, considering certain worldly events right now happening in the world. I'm also really enjoying the use of these rustic, folksy, acoustic-driven sections and textures and arrangements. That definitely adds a lot of extra sonic dimension to this. It is still disappointing to an extent that System of a Down can't just get their shit together and figure it out, especially because if you just sandwich these two EPs together, Elasticity and Foundations, and you added those two System of a Down songs that they managed to actually crap out a couple of years ago, boom, there you go. There's the long-awaited reunion album. But I digress. It just wasn't meant to be, I guess. Serj is doing his best, and he's doing a pretty damn good job at doing his best. Check out Foundations. We don't have System of a Down, but we got the next best fucking thing. It's pretty good. Next up, we have Exhibition of Prowess, brand new album from Kublai, or I guess as they're now officially known, Kublai, Texas. I don't know. I'm assuming that's what the TX stands for. They are from Texas, so that makes sense. I don't understand the name change. Does this work like Ghost BC? Where, like, that's just their name because of, like, a legal thing, but, like, I remember Ghost said the BC was silent. So in that case, it was still Ghost. In this case, is it still Kublai Khan? I don't know. I also don't kind of care. The album's fine. It's whatever. I don't know, I just found the record kind of boring. It doesn't have the energy or the momentum or the sheer force and brutality of some other kind of beat-down hardcore metalcore stuff. Like, I mean, I think about, like, the Knocked Loose albums, especially from earlier this year, and it's like, damn, literally night and day difference. There are some guest features, like Jamie Josta shows up, Dave Peters shows up, that does add something different kind of to the record, I guess. Kind of, sort of, different shouts, different gutturals, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, look, if you're in the mood for a bunch of dumb, thick, juicy fucking grooves, that's all you give a shit about, you love ham-fisted riffs, you love breakdowns, you want that shit as simple and as dirty as possible, good for you. I guess I don't know, I'm just not feeling it. I'm not even really talking shit. I'm just straight up not feeling this record. That's it, really. I don't know. Next up, we have the Judas Paradox, brand new album from God Dethroned. This thing was getting hyped up a little bit at the very beginning of September. And I'm not entirely sure I understand why. I found this to be a really bland, generic, and unremarkable record from start to finish. It's just such a basic, generic, by-the-books, paint-by-numbers, blackened death metal record. I mean, it's got the sinister energies that you expect, and the sneering vocals, and the blast beats, and anti-Christian lyrics and all that. It does absolutely nothing new or interesting. It plays out in very predictable fashion. I wasn't really thrown off guard or excited by anything on this record. Honestly, I don't even really think it's like that heavy or brutal either by blacker death metal standards. Like, I feel like it could have been a lot heavier sonically. The Kublai Khan record we just talked about was a lot heavier, honestly. I don't know. I'm gonna forget this album exists as soon as this video goes online. Like, it just did literally nothing for me. Next up, we have a self-titled debut album from Vended featuring Griffin Taylor, the son of Corey Taylor, who is the lead singer of Slipknot, who are a Grammy Award-winning, multi-platinum American nu metal, heavy metal, and alternative metal band. And I bring this up not for funsies, not because it's a cute, neat little piece of trivia or information or whatever the fuck, but because the moment you hear Vended, you will immediately say, if you have not already said, wow, this is basically just a Slipknot clone. And the real problem is that Vended just aren't as colorful or as expressive or as dynamic as Slipknot. Like, there's nothing happening on this album that doesn't sound more genuine and more powerful on something like Iowa, or Volume 3, or even a more recent record like We Are Not Your Kind, or I forget what the last album was called. I honestly do. But you know the one I'm talking about. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's an audience out there for this, especially considering how divided metalheads are on the modern era of Slipknot, but for me, personally, if I have to pick between listening to actual Slipknot, even at their worst, and a Slipknot clone that has nothing unique or interesting or original to say or offer, then frankly, I'm picking Slipknot. Straight up. Straight the fuck up. Next up, we have Draconian Darkness, brand new full-length studio album from Finnish melodic death metal crew Wolfheart. I don't really have a ton to say about this record either. Wolfheart have been around for just slightly over a decade at this point. They're pretty well established within the mellow death scene, and if you know who they are, then you already know what to expect from this album. Very tight, epic, beefy, brawny, melodic death metal, reminiscent at times, I would say, of Amon Amarth. It at bare minimum does bring to mind similar images of Scandinavian warriors storming battlefields praying to ancient gods. There are some strings and synths and clean vocals and choral vocals interjected throughout, giving this a little bit of extra atmosphere and scale. And it is overall decently produced and constructed and presented, you know? Like, there aren't any full-on duds. There aren't any really weird, out-there numbers that are potentially alienating or potentially divisive. It gets the job done, but much like with Vended, I think I'm just looking for something that just feels a little bit more original, that just has something a little bit different to say and offer. Like, there's really nothing about this record that would make me choose this over Amon Amarth, and I'm not even really the biggest fan of Amon Amarth, so, you know, take that with a grain of salt, I suppose. But hey, if you dig it, and if you want to spend the night drinking ale and swinging swords and axes in the air, then this will most certainly help you get that job done. Next up, we have the Imperious Horizon, brand new full-length studio album from Winterfylleth, which I came very close to actually reviewing here on this channel. I was actually really interested in this record. I was really into it. Very cold, immersive, lush, grandiose, atmospheric black metal with heavy influence from like classic second wave Norwegian black metal. This album just has massive size and scale and feel to it. It does a great job at painting these lush and beautiful and devastating portraits. Even in its quietest moments, I feel while listening to this album, I'm traversing a cold, barren landscape. I'm climbing a mountain. I'm hiking through the forest. Love how it balances these very spacious, open, atmospheric sections with heavy emphasis on synths and strings with more bombastic black metal elements. I love how emotional it is and feels from start to finish. Like, these guys are really putting their hearts into this. And honestly, I am loving the production of this thing. I mean, the guitar tone is so expressive and so powerful. The drums have this massive, titanic, thunderous weight and feel to them. It's crystal clear and even by atmospheric black metal standards, surprisingly punchy at times. Had this gotten a review, I think we'd be looking at a stupidly enthusiastic 3.5 out of 5, leaning very heavily towards a 4 out of 5. There's a solid chance it would have been a 4 out of 5 as well. I don't know. I'm kind of feeling that as well now that I say that out loud. Really great, really strong, powerful, atmospheric black metal. Definitely check it out. Next up, we have what I assume is pronounced Döth-Derniàlh. I don't know, and I'm certain some Grammar Nazi neckbeard will be quick and happy to correct me in the comment section below. This is the latest full-length studio album from Esoctrilihum, one of the busiest and craziest bands within the underground black metal scene today. Esoctrilihum has kind of operated as black metal's equivalent to like King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard, if that makes sense. Like, they're constantly pumping out new material, and it's constantly super fucking weird. My favorite has been Funeral, released in January of 2023. That same year, they released another album and a brand new EP. This is the first thing they've released this year, which feels weird. I feel like by now they should have done more, but c'est la vie. Maybe there's more on the way. I don't know. Here's what I do know. This record, in true Esoctrilihum fashion, is fucking weird. Like, tons of psychedelic textures and patterns, tons of crazy guitar licks and tones all throughout, raging, vicious black metal, very raw, lo-fi in certain parts, kind of these almost medieval folk-inspired sections as well all throughout, acoustic-driven sections and such. Lots of really jagged rhythms and dissonant avant-garde black metal style sections and arrangements and atmospheres and fucking organs and like symphonic undertones and such. It's, as per the norm with Esoctrilihum, absolutely fucking wild. I look forward to spending a lot more time kind of dissecting this record. I mean, it's Esoctrilihum. They have yet to fail. They have yet to flop. Definitely check it out if you want some crazy weird shit. Next up, we have Spellshock, brand new full-length studio album from blackened thrash and speed and heavy metal crew Bewitcher. This we also almost reviewed here on the Metal Meltdown, but we decided to review the Kanonenfieber record instead, and I'm kind of happy we did that because with all due respect to Bewitcher, that was a more impressive and clever and unique record. But, this is still fun. Like, lots of classic underground metal tones and vibes here. It's a very high-energy record, very in-your-face, very punchy, very aggressive. Lots of fun, eclectic, gnarly, old-school, heavy metal, speed metal, thrash metal riffage, filtered through the darkness and the aura of black metal. Very mystical, hellish, supernatural energies and lyricism all throughout. There's a good amount of variety, too, to the record. Like, you have slower sections, you have punkier riffs and outbursts and more kind of classic metal riffs and thrashier assaults and more volatile sections. It's just a fun record, you know? Like, it's fun, it's catchy, it's bright, and it also has this dark, brutal underbelly to it, you know? It can be menacing and it can be sinister, you know? Had we gone ahead with a review, we'd be looking at a very solid 3.5 out of 5, you know? I don't really have much more to say, which also probably means it was a good thing we didn't review this album. It's just a fun record, man! I like fun, contrary to popular belief. Definitely check it out. Next up, we have Lightless Expanse, brand new sophomore album from sludgy death doom crew Glacial Tomb, featuring Ben Hutcherson and David Small of Chemist fame. Very bleak, very oppressive, with some cosmic vibes and spices and undertones. This has a really big, consuming feel to it. There are huge, towering walls and waves of death metal destruction all over the place, sludgy, doomy drawls, some weird, gnarly guitar tones and little grooves. But then, simultaneous to that, you'll have some interesting guitar work kind of cut through the noise and soar through the heavens. Not quite too Moldian in fashion, but, you know, it does have that similar balance of, like, just crushing, gnarly brutality and also more cosmic, dare I say, progressive influences. Like, definitely not as adventurous and ambitious, but again, playing around with similar energies and influences to the point where, you know, I honestly could picture Glacial Tomb going into that kind of like full-on Enduring Spirit style cosmic death metal in the future. I like how simultaneous to all of this, too, Glacial Tomb have a really clean, refined, polished sound and production. Like, everything has a super beefy, full-bodied sound, everything sounds really powerful and dominating. And the sludgy, doomy riffs and undertones do a lot to add a lot of, like, despair and brutality to this, you know? Like, it just sounds so fucking mean, so fucking menacing. Like, I'm traveling through a dark, angry, empty void. Definitely a very cool record, definitely very brutal, definitely check it out. And finally, let's start wrapping things up with Catastrophic Creation, brand new full-length studio album from Korrosive, a high-octane technical sci-fi thrash metal crew from my neck of the woods here in Toronto, Ontario. Hello, my fellow Torontonian metalheads in Korrosive. How are you? Guess what? I like you. I like this album a lot. This is an explosive, high-energy, frantic display of over-the-top riffs and battering beatdowns and gnarly old-school thrash energy, but filtered through the precision, the musicianship, the cosmic, spacey aura of something like Vector, or even like modern-day Pestilence to an extent, without the smug aura of Patrick Mameli either to boot. Like, this thing roars and rips and tears and shreds and sizzles like a motherfucker. It never stops, it never relents, it just throws an endless pile of riffs and solos and beats and bass lines and screaming, shouting vocals at you in rapid fire. Honestly, this might be the best thrash metal record I've heard so far this year. I feel like they knocked it out of the park with this. I think in the future it might be fun to really embrace that kind of like technical progressive thrash metal side, or go into like crazy Voivod territory, or maybe even some weird ass kind of Revocation territory. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge in the future. That's Korrosive's call to make, not mine. For now, it's fucking fun. Check it out. I think you're gonna like it. Cheers, Korrosive. How you doing? Yeah. And voila, I think that's it. I think we're good here. Those are all the albums that I feel I missed in the month of September 2024. Lord knows there's probably at least a few more that slipped under the radar, or that I actively chose not to talk about because I don't fucking care. Whatever. Let me know. What albums did I miss that I didn't talk about today? What do you think of these albums? What are you looking forward to in the future? Kaboom! Let me know in the comments or on Discord. Hell yeah. Boom, subscribe. Boom, other videos. Join us on Discord. Pick up some merch on Redbubble. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.